Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy ASQ back in with another gaming video. Today I'm going to be talking about the whole fiasco with Cyberpunk 2077 on the last gen systems. I want to make sure that make this perfectly clear. I have not played the game yet. I don't have any sort of bias to any sort of gaming system or to any company at all. I really am trying to be an outsider who is looking at this entire situation, who can just give an unbiased opinion. So I've seen gameplay of it on last gen. I've seen gameplay on current gen. And I've seen it on PC. So I want to just assess what's going on, and I kind of want to explain why I think exactly what's happening with the last gen systems makes sense. But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to ask you that if you are new to the channel, that you please consider subscribing. We are currently sitting at a 94.9% not subscribed to subscribed percentage thing for my viewers on the channel. So if you do enjoy the content that you see today, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can see more of it. Hit the like button, helps the channel grow a ton, and hit that notification bell so you're notified every single time I upload a new video. Here's kind of my 2 cents of where I think the whole situation is. It makes sense. I don't know what people were expecting, to be honest. And before you go into the comments, calling me a neckbeard trying to defend Sony and Microsoft. No neckbeard. Sorry, I trim it. The game, yes, was developed during the life cycle of the last gen systems. That we can all agree on. However, at some point, they did have to make that switch to develop this game to look good and run well on the current gen systems. That means they wanted it to have a higher fidelity. They wanted to add ray tracing. There is just a lot of things that had to go into it. We're also talking SSD velocity architecture, like what Microsoft is doing on the Series X. I'm not entirely sure that Cyberpunk does take advantage of that. However, knowing what's going on with the last gen, where textures aren't loading in until several seconds after you actually walk up to a model, it kind of sounds like it's inherently possible that they are using some form of the velocity architecture coming from the SSD being loaded directly to the GPU rather than going, through the south bridge into the CPU to be processed to go to the GPU. Things like that. To me, that's what it sounds like. I'm not certain on that. Don't quote me on that. But just to me, it seems like that's inherently possible. Or it is just possible that the game was coded for faster rendering, real-time rendering, that on the last gen systems with the old mechanical hard drives just aren't gonna work. Speaking of the last gen systems just not working, let's take a step back and think about what these last gen systems are. We're talking 8-core AMD Jaguar CPUs first off, which are they're laptop cores, their laptop CPUs being crammed into a gaming console. They're incredibly slow. We're talking, I don't have the number off the top of my head, and also I don't want to pull it up, but I think it's right around 1.7 gigahertz. I'll put it up on the screen what it actually is for both consoles, but it's extremely slow. A current gen PC, like a Ryzen CPU, we're talking the 8 cores being up right around 3.6, at least above 3. 1.7 is extremely slow. And then not to mention how underpowered the GPUs are in these systems. People will say that they are they're up to par and should be. They're not. They are incredibly underpowered, and they can't be running things that are being developed with the 2080 in mind. That's essentially what the comparison is when you take an Xbox Series X GPU and compare it to a PC GPU. It's right around a 2080. I think the comparison is between a 2080 Super and a 2080 Ti, something like that. It took a lot of years for the 360 and the PlayStation 3 to die. It took really a long time. I think they're still developing games for the 360, if I'm not mistaken. They're not developing the 360 anymore and producing that, or the PlayStation 3 for that matter, but I think they still do release games on that. I'm not positive on that, but at least they were for years and years after the new consoles came out. The thing is with the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 is just they're not powerful and they can't keep up anymore. The 360 and the PlayStation 3, while the PlayStation 3 was an incredibly difficult console to develop for, it was specialized hardware. Technically, the PlayStation 3 was extremely powerful, just really hard to develop for. That's why a lot of first-party games looked absolutely incredible on the PlayStation 3, and they still look good today. Not to say that they look next-gen, but they still look good. Like, have you seen Last of Us on the PlayStation 3? That's one of the last first-party games to come out on the PlayStation 3. It looks incredible on the PlayStation 3. But now that they've moved into a architecture where both of them are on x86, they're both basically PCs. The PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One are both basically PC hardware. Actually, it is PC hardware, and I just want to iterate that. It's PC hardware. You have to keep up with the PC landscape at that point. So when you think about it and you kind of put it into perspective that it's basically a PC, the Xbox One, the original Xbox One, had 8 gigs, and this is only one part of it, had 8 gigs of DDR3 memory. DDR3. At 21 to 33 megahertz. And that's shared between the CPU and the GPU. Tell me that you could run a game on 8 total gigs of memory in your entire system. It's not going to work out. To put that into perspective, ladies and gentlemen, my PC has 16 gigs of DDR4 3200 megahertz, and it has an RTX 2060 Super that has 8 gigs of GDDR6 memory. So that's a total of mental math. 24 gigs total memory. This system probably will not run Cyberpunk as well as the next gen consoles. Totally honest. Let's just think about that though. Let's just think about that. And actually, I don't even know what there is to think about, because what do people want? What do they want? Do they want the game to look good on next gen, or they want it to be good, run well on last gen? Which do you want? I would rather have the game run well and look good on the current gen than have the game be developed to run really well on the last gen, and that it just becomes mediocre for the next gen. I think what they did was perfectly reasonable to make the game really well optimized on the next gen and kind of ignore the last gen, pretty much. I think that if CD Projekt Red had their way, the game would not have released on the last gen. However, if any of you recall, it was Sony and Microsoft's policy that the games that are released in the first year of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, that they are cross-generation. That was their policy. If they could, I'm 100% positive they would not have released it on the last gen. Even though they announced it as being a last gen, like a game that was coming out on that generation of consoles, at some point they made the switch to go to the next gen. So what can we take away from this? Well, one, I think it's time that we have to understand that the Xbox One, the original Xbox One, and the original PS4 are just not viable consoles in general. And I know you can't go out and buy a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X right now, or even a Series S, but it's just how it is. It really is. It is what it is. That's kind of what it is right now. In conclusion, Cyberpunk did not really need to look good on the last gen systems, because at some point it became a next gen game, and we all kind of have to understand that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not entirely sure if that all made sense, but that's kind of what I want to leave you with, is none of this makes sense. We're in a weird time anyway. If you did like the video somehow, please make sure to give it a like, dislike if you disliked it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see better videos than this one, and hit that notification bell so you're notified every single time I upload a new video. I'm Icy Ice Cube, and yeah, I'm out.